Call to order.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Kramer.
Yes.
Dr. Kramer. Yes. Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
All
We have a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Gonzalez, do we have any agenda changes or additions?
No, we do not.
Thank you. And approval of the agenda, do you have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Kramer.
Yes.
Dr. Kramer. Yes. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Yeah. I need a motion to certify matters discussed in closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the discussion retroactively on March the 8th for appointments, resignations, and retirements. And also for this evening, March 22nd, for transfers, appointments, resignations, and retirements as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Dr. Kramer. Yes. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Yeah. Citizen comment period. Dr. Kane, are you reading those?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay Rayburn, 885 Parkview Estates Road, Lorraine. The decision to move the middle school and upper elementary grades to 4 days per week feels like a decision that was made in a rush and in the dark. Teachers were blindsided by the decision, if they were not asked for comment, or if they have any idea if the board and superintendent were discussing such a change. Unfortunately, more often than not, the teachers are not incorporated in any of the decision-making process. However, this time, because it is the health and safety of the teachers and students that is being impeded upon, I am more inclined to share my thoughts. I am flabbergasted that the board is willing to lose mitigation strategies. Some schools have been able to maintain 6 feet social distancing and abide by the CDC VDH standards due to the hybrid schedule. Schools have also been able to keep up with cleaning. Following these mitigation strategies is one of the reasons there haven't been school-wide outbreaks. Larger class sizes, changing classes, the loss of social distancing. Those factors make teachers fearful for their student safety when we could ensure safety and learning within the classroom previously. If moving to 4 days per week of learning was inevitable due to the state or federal pressure, why is it that the decision was so rushed? Because teachers had little to no idea this change was coming. It comes off as a knee-jerk reaction to something. Why are we being reactionary to a situation that requires detailed planning? Teachers and administrators have worked tirelessly to create logistical plans and routines that meet safety standards in order to keep students and teachers safe. The timeline of this decision did and has not allowed schools to adequately prepare. George Tickerhoof, 184 Panther Drive, Shenandoah. Good evening, members of the board. I'm a science teacher at PCHS and a building rep for PCEA. I'm writing in regard to the status of the pay scales in our school system. I have completed 5 years of teaching in Virginia, 4 of those at Page, and nearly 8 years in the classroom. I'm currently making about $200 more a year than a brand new hire with no experience. I'm also making the salary of a teacher who has completed 4 years of service. While this isn't too bad, some teachers are working with a much larger disparity in their salary versus years of service. I've come to love working at Page. However, now that my wife and I are looking to buy a house, we have hit a snag. I cannot afford a house in Page County on a Page County salary. And within the last 12 months, every one of my bills has increased despite making the same amount of money. This leaves me living in an apartment smaller than my classroom. I've had to begin working 2 jobs, meaning that I start and end each school year working at 2 different jobs, giving 1 day off per week if I'm lucky. This has started to bring 3 options into focus for me. 1, continue as I am and hope for better days ahead. 2, earn another degree to increase my income. Or 3, the option I dislike most, leave Page County for another school system with higher pay. At the end of this, I'm asking that you work out the budget for the coming school year and future years. It to be considered to evaluate the pay scales to help fix the disparity I've mentioned, and that many teachers can attest to, and bring our pays to being more competitive with surrounding counties. I've seen many good teachers leave PCHS simply due to pay. Please help us retain the great teachers our students deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration. Also, thank you to the responsible parties for arranging things to have more students in the building. It's great to have more students back. Sincerely, George Tickerhoof, science teacher. John Griffith, 104 Eden Road, Luray. Dear school administrators, superintendent, and board members, my comments are in regards to the remote learning days still on the 21-22 school calendar. Hopefully you all are aware, Virginia Senate Bill 1303 has unanimously passed with bipartisan support and will become law on July 1st, 2021, after it's signed by the governor. For those who are not aware, this law requires each school system to offer in-person, 5 days a week instruction to students enrolled in local school divisions in Virginia. Further details from the law is as follows. 1. As used in this act, in-person instruction means any form of instructional interaction between teachers and students that occurs in person and in real time. In-person instruction does not include the act of proctoring remote online learning in a classroom. 2. Each school board shall offer in-person instruction to each student enrolled in the local school division in a public elementary and secondary school for at least the minimum number of required instructional time, 990 hours, 180 days, and to each student enrolled in the local school division in a public school-based early childhood care and education program for the entirety of the instructional time provided pursuant to such program. For the purposes of this act, each school board shall adopt, implement, and when appropriate, update specific parameters for the provision of in-person instruction and provide such in-person instruction in a manner in which it adheres to the maximum extent practicable and any currently applicable mitigation strategies for early childhood care and education programs and elementary and secondary schools to reduce the transmission. Therefore, how and why are these remote learning days still on the 2021-22 calendar? It's been made clear over the last 2 school board meetings that these days should count toward the 180 required days, but yet they will not occur in person, nor in real time, as teachers will not be available these days due to training work days. Understand these training work days are very important for teachers and staff and should continue as normal. However, the remote learning for students on these days needs to be removed for so many obvious reasons, but mainly due to the fact they are unethical, a disservice to our children, and now will even be against the law. This law only addresses virtual as an option for student choice during the current state of emergency until it is lifted, and also only used when outbreaks have been deemed by the Virginia Department of Health. In this law, even virtual is defined as in-person, real-time teacher instruction. Coming out of the uncharted waters of the pandemic, it should be obvious to everyone that counting days of school needs to be quality days of in-person, in-class instruction at every possible opportunity, not just counting a school day because it's the easiest way. Just a reminder that remote learning does not occur unless students are actually learning. Furthermore, I, as well as many other parents, do not appreciate the attempt at changing the name of remote learning to something different, as a means to mislead the public or pretend that this is something different. Remote learning is still the same old logistical paper nightmare that has been all school year. The truth is that school leadership has had a year to set up internet with the county and has failed to do so until recently. with only 2 months of school remaining. Even with this, parents and students still have to figure out when they will be able to drive out to these access points to do work and how they do it once they get there. All other surrounding counties had completed this work before the school year started, or at least had a plan in place during the summer. Many of our students can't even get cell phone service at their homes, so getting internet to everyone for effective synchronized learning will be nearly impossible. Even if it was possible and completed by next school year, what is the reason for remote days? To get in 180 days before Memorial Day? What is the push for Memorial Day when we start before Labor Day? Memorial Day seems to be the only goal in the schedule, as the superintendent stated almost a dozen times within the last 2 meetings, not what's best for student learning. The science and guidance are telling you that it's now safe for students to be back in the classroom. So please stop wasting their precious time trying to put logic and justification around an illogical and unnecessary broken system with no educational value. Lastly, on a positive note, over 70% of Page County teachers and staff have been vaccinated for COVID-19. A huge thank you to our teachers and staff for making our schools literally the safest place to be in the county and possibly in the entire country, where also 70% of anyone been vaccinated. This is an amazing accomplishment and the type of precedence that Page County Public Schools should be setting, not just a follower behind all the other area schools. Thank you all. Cassie Bailey, 985 Lacey River East Road, Luray. My name is Cassie Bailey. I'm Vice President of the Page County Education Association. I listened with interest to the budget work session on March 10th. I urged the Board of Education to not put off the review of salary schedules and make a concerted effort to revise those salaries that may have been stunted due to previous freeze years. I've listened to several employees whom this issue has impacted as they have shared their concerns directly with me, especially as some look to retirement in the coming years. These employees held faith with the school division and remained, and they deserve to be recompensed for their years of service in PCP schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Approval of the February 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 2021.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve February 2021 minutes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Information special education on annual plan, Ms. Bildler. What?
Good evening, members of the board, Chairman Breeden, Dr. Gonzalez. I bring before you this evening the first informational item on the annual special education plan. This is federal monies that is used to supplement, not supplant, what the school division is doing for special education within the division. And it's comprised primarily of 2 grants, the first one being the 611, which covers a school-age population, and the second grant being 619, which covers preschool. The majority of these 2 grants historically have been used to cover salaries in this division. There is a portion of the school-age grant that is used, which must be set aside and used specifically for students who are either being homeschooled or in private school facilities receiving special education services. You'll see that amount listed on the proposal that I sent to you. That amount is set by the state. It is not something that is set by us. It's based upon numbers that we submit through our December 1 child count. That number has to be set aside and held for the duration of the grant. And if those monies aren't expended, then they're held for another year cycle and then can be returned back to the locality through a request process. So with the school-based grant, this round, I'm asking to keep the positions that we've had in the grant, to maintain those 10 special education positions. I'm asking for consideration for an eligibility teacher who would help take off some of the stressors for hosting eligibility meetings, making sure timelines are met, making sure all the data is presented and ready at a specific time. And I'm also requesting 5 per diem days for the transition lead teacher who does work for us during the summer months to cover our out-of-district placement students. So that teacher, while she covers transition at our high school, she also covers all of our divisions out-of-county placements. And as you know, our students who are in day and residential facilities, those don't necessarily stop during the summer months. And so her services are often needed during the summer, and to have an additional 5 days for her to be able to work as when needed for that purpose. The second page looks at the preschool grant. And again, the majority of that grant is set aside for salary and benefits. And if there are any questions related to the grants, I'll be glad to answer them now. I'll be back again at the next board meeting as a second informational, and then I'll be asking for approval in April.
I just have a question. Two actually, Greg. The division-wide eligibility facilitator, you don't have that currently, or someone in that position?
Do not.
And are the special ed numbers growing?
Our special education numbers are staying pretty consistent. The crux is that we previously had a special education coordinator position, and that position was reduced to just a part-time position. So it's just a half-time position. And we've really felt the impact from that decision.
Okay, so this is to bring back on par.
Correct. So this position would not be a coordinator. It would not necessarily be somebody with an administrative degree. It could be someone with a teacher's license.
Yeah, I think you had said the teacher. Okay. And the other question I had is, this is just from the grant. It's not also what you're getting from the county in your budget, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And this is federal monies.
Because that just solves the question, because of like, you got all these teachers going for specialized training, $2,100 is not going to do it.
No, and to be honest with you, the majority of that 2,100 is used. We have a few itinerant teachers who have to travel from one side of the division to another, and that's used to give them some mileage reimbursement.
That's perfect. I was just concerned, it's like, well, if that's the only amount you have, you're limited in your trainings that you'll be able to do.
Thank you for thinking of that.
And I know there's a number of them from BDOE, so that's going to Richmond or at least the closest to Charlottesville.
Yes.
Any questions from the board member?
Thank you.
And the next informational item is Gonzalez reading specialist clarification.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and school board members, I had updated you in an email according to the information with our reading specialist, but I wanted to go on record for our stakeholders who listen to our school board meetings. We do, out of our 4 elementary schools, we do have 2 in the position of a reading teacher who have their reading specialist degrees. We have 4 other people within our division who do not currently work as reading teachers who are endorsed for their reading specialist degree, but they did not serve in that capacity. And we have 1 other who is qualified to have their endorsement in that area. So I just wanted to clarify that we do have some people certified. We only have 2 actually working in the role. We have others who are in other roles within the division, but I want to clarify that to our stakeholders.
Questions from the board? Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Next informational item is field trips, local, Dr. Gonzalez and Mr. Denton.
Yes, we wanted to bring this in front of the board this evening. As we're returning more students to school, we have athletics going on. The next natural question are people wanting to do field trips. We have had a couple of requests come to our desk. We feel all sorts of different ways about it. You know, there's all kinds of pros and cons related to all that. We were feeling like we could do some local field trips, and we wanted to get the board's feeling on it. We have one request later on the agenda tonight for an out-of-state that would require board approval. So at this point, I'll let Mr. Benson take over and describe some of the local field trips that we're looking at and the criteria related to that.
I would just add that, as Dr. Gonzalez said, we have local trips, and we talked a little bit about, I think, what local meant, and we agreed that we would kind of try to ask for like a 50-mile radius. That kind of keeps trips under an hour in length. Obviously, the buses are an issue, and just trying to control some of the location. We feel good about the strategies, the mitigation strategies that our teachers and students are using. Where our hesitation comes in is going to locations where maybe we don't have as much control in that situation. So where, a school group were to visit some sort of location, and there were guests there that maybe weren't 100% masking, they're doing different things like that. We said we've been requiring in our school, we wouldn't obviously be approving those local trips for our students to be able to attend. So we're asking for some flexibility. We've also talked about that really we want to put the onus back on the parent to make that decision for the student, say whether or not the parent feels good about the trip once that trip may get division approval. We have seen trips, some of the trips that we've seen are things like visiting the local southern states. One of our ag classes would like to go down and do some things, tour the facility, see some demonstration of things. So these are educational experiences that we can't necessarily replicate in our classroom. We have some hesitation. We know that there's some standard trips that have come up, typically at the end of the year for different grade levels. We talked about, for instance, the trip to the DC Zoo. Okay, that might not be considered. That's not a trip that we're recommending at this time. We don't consider that a local trip. But going out to a park or different, maybe a fire station or some of those community locations, we would like to begin to start to move forward. As Dr. Gonzalez said, we feel like we have athletics trips going on and different things, and that maybe for the remainder of the school year we could consider some field trips.
With alternative activities planned for children whose families decide that they do not want to participate. It wouldn't be punitive, it'd just be an alternative activity. So it was more like a consensus, because we can approve the local ones. We just wanted to make sure that we had some board somewhat consensus or support, or how you all felt about that, as we're ready to allow that to happen. Okay.
I'm supportive of it, for sure. I mean, we're doing sports, we can do a field trip.
I mean, we've been doing field trips without any.
Incidents, okay.
My only question is, if you're not allowing parents to come into the school, are you going to allow them to be chaperones?
We haven't even thought about that.
Because you need so many
You're
adults
right.
per kids, and you
Well,
still can't pack the school bus, so then you're going to be using more transportation. That I know is an issue anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't make it easy, that's for sure.
Especially in big schools.
My off-the-cuff answer is that maybe we would ask some of those chaperones to just meet us
Yeah.
there at the location. We're still trying to give as much distance. Obviously the nicer temperatures today, spring weather's here. We've got the bus windows down, but just trying to keep those numbers down and asking those folks to meet us at the location.
Yeah, I mean,
think
there's
would be-
lots
would
of
be my
outdoor
off-the-cuff
spaces
answer.
like the park and Frontier Culture Museum and
Exactly.
things. So
Those are the types of things that we're starting to think about.
But we're not thinking about DC.
No.
No, or Jamestown, not the,
Yeah.
we just don't want them on the bus for a long period of time.
even for the little kids, Explore More is on a total sanitation between groups. So
Okay, thank you for that. We felt like too, if our athletes aren't going as far, then our field trip shouldn't go as far. And now we do realize that in playoff time, they might go a little further, but on the average season, it's about a 50-mile radius. We felt like that was doable then for field trips as well.
We're trying to make school feel normal again. Field trips are part of a normal school experience. And we've talked with you guys as the board to say we're trying to offer those social emotional opportunities for students to do things together and still interact in that way. And field trips are part of that. So, but, we wanted to be open to say there's honest conversation going on, and we're trying to make sure we're doing it in a safe manner.
Thanks for doing that.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I just assumed it was on. Next informational item is graduation, Executive Order 72 update. Dr. Gonzalez, Mr. Benson, and Mr. Moran.
Yes, and that's actually a great segue from our last conversation, board members. Just for our stakeholders to understand, while Executive Order 72's update was amended to allow us to have graduation with a lot of specificity as to what we had to follow. And yes, we're trying to have field trips to make schools seem more normal. We cannot still have prom or certain end of year celebrations. Celebratory things like that still fall under the no from the state. So we've asked that question in our phone calls with the state superintendent, the superintendents have, and with beyond a shadow of a doubt, they told us no when we asked about prom and stuff for obvious reasons, the close proximity when you're dancing. So I just need people to know while we are bringing some things back, not everything is back. And some things still fall under the category of celebratory and not educational. Okay, so just so we have that. So with that, the great news is that we did get some, the superintendents, I'll have to say, we really pushed hard, and it's a group. It's all 132 of us. We're really pushing to have an answer on graduation. And thankfully, the governor heeded our request and is granting us this. And so we want to be good stewards of this opportunity and make sure that we follow the rules. So we've been working with the schools about some plans, and Eric and his instructional team have been working closely with the two high school principals to look at what some of our plans are going to look like. And so Mr. Benson, and then also Ms. Moran with our mitigation strategies. We have a lot of stuff we have to do to pull this off. So Mr. Benson, if you'll start us off, please.
Sure. So as Dr. Gonzalez alluded to, we received some updated guidance from the governor in terms of Executive Order 72, which does permit outdoor graduations. So what we started to do is begin to dissect the guidance, and so I just want to walk you through that this evening. We asked both schools to think about a location that made sense for an outdoor graduation. And so you have the recommendations from both schools below. We used the Google Earth tool to kind of begin to calculate square feet. The square feet matters. The guidance from the governor says one person per 40 square feet. So what we did is we used Google Earth to determine what is the total square feet of the locations we were looking for. So that's why you see the maps. And you can see in those boxes, you're well over 200 and some thousand square feet there. And then you start to do the math. And then, so as you do that, once you get over, I'll just do the PCHS example. I think that one's pretty clear at the bottom there. So the square footage is 222,264. If you do 40 square feet per person, that would get you down to 5,557. Okay? And then the governor's guidance says you take 30% of the capacity of that number. And so there we would be looking at 1,667. And from there, what we said to each school is, okay, if we can have 1,667 people in this area that we've identified, how many tickets can we offer to each graduate? And we feel like based upon the number of graduates that we have and welcoming staff and distinguished guests, we would like to propose that each graduate would get 10 tickets to the outdoor graduation. Okay, there's approximately just over 150 graduates, so you can understand where we're coming up with that number. So that's why you see the maps and things below. On the back, you start to see some of the event details that are also part of the governor's guidance. Signage is going to be really important at this event. So one of the first things folks are going to see is the fact that, if you've been displaying any of the symptoms of COVID, you're not to enter the event. Some of the same questions that you've been asked probably when you've entered different locations. There will not be food or beverage served. Water can be available, so for different guests. They wanted it to be really clear. They're not expecting this to be a party, so to speak. Folks are going to be welcome to come together and celebrate the graduate within their pod. And what we call a pod is the 10 members that are closest to that graduate that they've invited. but they really shouldn't be any loitering, so to speak, where folks are hanging out before, during, or after the celebration. It's come to the celebration, let's have a good time, and then let's move folks on their way. There will need to be queue lines for exiting and entering, and obviously we'll have to stagger some times. If you're going to bring that number of people to an event, we've already begun to look at that, what that can look like. We've been thinking about the mitigation. Obviously, we're going to have signage that said masks are required. We're going to need to make folks aware and know that is required to be there. And then we've also begun starting to think about the seating. Okay, like I've alluded to earlier tonight, the pod, they can be within 6 feet of each other when you're sitting in your group of 10. Okay, we will be asking guests to bring their own chairs. So if you have that lawn chair, that helps us with, we don't have to disinfect or do different things with they bring their own chair. So when the high schools are going to be setting up for it, they're going to be identifying approximately 150 places on this outdoor field where a pod could sit, if that makes sense. Okay, and we're going to make sure when we mark those off that those pods of where those 10 groups of 10 will be sitting will be 10 feet from another pod. We've begun to thinking about where we would put the stage at either location and handicap seating and different things. So we've kind of begun to dug in there. So we've given you some of that. As we went outside today and started to look at the number of feet in between each graduate, 10 feet is just not going to be possible. I'm going to tell you right now. And so when we went back with Dr. Gonzalez and looked at the guidance from the governor, it basically says do the best you can. Okay. And so I think we feel safe that we're going to at least be able to put 6 feet between each graduate, and that should be fine since we're out at an outdoor event.
Yep.
And then, well, obviously, again, there's going to be room for faculty and other distinguished guests. Luray High School has already said that they're not planning to have band or choir. Those things are going to be pre-recorded. The executive order talks about having 10 feet between music play. So, if you're singing or you're blowing into an instrument and, saliva were to be projected or something like that, you have to at least be 10 feet. Luray High School has come right out and said, we're just going to go ahead and pre-record that. I think Paige is still planning on having the band and choir there. We set some graduation practice. From this document, today we began to have quite a bit of discussion about what we would do in terms of if we had inclement weather. Okay, because we want to have a backup plan. I think all along we were thinking that the video would be the backup plan, but after speaking with both high schools, and I think they're starting to get some feedback from our community, I think both high schools would like to consider an indoor graduation also as a backup plan. And so I'm prepared tonight to kind of walk you through how that could happen. So right now, as you saw in your document, Saturday, May the 22nd is our date for graduation. So we would like to propose tonight that on Friday, May the 21st at 5 p.m., we would begin to start to make a decision as to what we're going to do the next day based upon the forecast. So we would say at that point on Friday evening, are we going out or are we going inside? Okay. And if the weather looked like, that it was questionable at that time, we would say, okay, we're going to go inside. When we made the decision to go inside, then we have to look at what's the biggest location that we have inside, and we do believe that is the high school gymnasium for that. So if you do the same sort of math that we did before, and you say, okay, what is the capacity of the gymnasium? The capacity is 1,500 in the bleachers, okay? And you say 30% of that is 450. And you start to think about, okay, how can we pull this off? We would propose that you would have basically 2 cohorts for each high school. So you would take that graduating class of around 150 students, and you would say one of you is going to fall into if Luray High is at 10, one of you will fall into the 9 a.m. cohort, and the other half of you will fall into the 11 a.m. cohort. Okay, and we'll basically have 2 different graduation ceremonies. Why do you have to have 2 different graduation ceremonies? Well, if you think about it, you only have 450 tickets. And so if you start to do the math out per graduate, you would want to have a few people attend this event. So for an indoor event, we would propose that 5 people would be possible. Half of the number for the outdoor. Okay, but we would have to have 2 different ceremonies. And we would like to do the same thing at Page. So a 9 a.m. and an 11 a.m. at Luray High, We've already been talking, obviously, the valedictorian and the salutatorian and those speakers would say their speeches twice and other distinguished guests. And we would like to do the same up at Page. So we would propose tonight that we would do a graduation at 3 o'clock and a graduation at 5 o'clock if we had it go indoors. And at that time, we would be doing the same sort of thing. We would be identifying approximately 75 places in the bleachers where a group of 5 could sit, if that makes sense. We would put all of the graduates on the main floor in the gym. So again, we would be spacing chairs at least 6 feet apart. We would put approximately 75 chairs on the main floor in the gym. And we would have a setup, with a podium and different things at that time. So that kind of brings us to the idea of a video. If you're going to have an outdoor celebration and you have a backup plan for an indoor celebration, then the administration's recommendation is that we do something different with Mr. King's services. We not record a video. And what we would like to propose is that we use Mr. King to do the live stream. All of the blast out. So if we go outdoors, he will do all of the virtual showing of the graduation. His services will be rendered for that. And if we go indoors, the same thing happens. And we will ask Mr. King, we've already done so, to record that video. And we will make that recording available to our families following graduation.
I think you've covered it.
I hope our families are happy with that.
I would like to think so.
I think that really gives the feeling of, somewhat back to normal. I'm going to be honest with you, with kids walking across the stage. Obviously, we know we're going to do all the mitigation for the handing of diplomas and different things. And we've got, as we start to go out to these facilities, I mentioned to Dr. Gonzalez today, we've got some work to do at each of these locations. We would like to begin to just make sure ramps and porta-johns and other things, and maybe some spraying for some weeds and different things. So we really are going to try to make an effort to make each location look as good as possible.
So for the backup plan, if they end up going into the gymnasiums, are those doors going to be open and fans be running, or are they going to be running the AC?
That's a good question.
Mr. Moran, don't we have the separate ventilation system in those gymnasiums?
So our ventilation system in the gymnasiums, they ventilate directly to the outside. That air, whenever it does ventilate, right out the door.
But if you have the doors open to the commons, how is that what's that affect?
Then what you do is it actually ventilates with the rest of the school. If you close those doors, then it only ventilates to the gymnasium and the outside.
Okay.
And one thing I would mention, if we decide to go indoors, we probably will say to faculty and staff, we're not going to welcome you. I'm just going to be honest there.
Right.
Simply because what we're doing is taking seats away from graduates' families. And so I think the faculty and staff would understand at that point. We would have just the principal and assistant principal and maybe somebody from guidance to assist in the handing out diplomas, but we would really try to limit the number of school staff in hopes that, because we got to keep that number below 450.
I hope that people understand they need to be flexible and understand that if the weather becomes bad, that, they can't have to accept that.
Well, and that's why we're going to do the streaming. So, yeah, they won't be there in person, but they'll still get to experience it.
So whether or not we go outdoors or indoors, we're still rendering Mr. King services to do the live stream.
So is that why instead of doing the football field for Luray, you're doing it right there on premises for the streaming?
There's quite a few different advantages that LHS feels like would be better for the event at the school. Simply because, first off, the amount of parking at the school is greater than if you were to go down to Bulldog Field.
Yeah.
Secondly, you have all of the different materials that you need. Nothing needs to be transported down to the field. And as you they've already been outside today playing with sound and different things, and they feel like they can really create a nice event. That is the school. Obviously, there's some sentimental value there as well, that you get to graduate from at the location that is right at the school.
Yeah.
So right now, we've just simply been taking their recommendation and saying we would present that here this evening.
So, Mr. Rand, anything you want to add on the mitigation strategies? We kind of already had it covered on the
Yeah,
handout.
just that we'll be following those strategies to the letter. Obviously, masking is going to be important, that sort of thing. Social distancing will be something we adhere to, the distance between pods, that sort of thing. We'll be following the governor's order as closely as possible.
So when students come to practice, which is the last thing on the handout, we will hand them 2 sets of tickets. We'll hand them 10 tickets for an outdoor event. We'll hand them 5 tickets for an indoor.
What differentiates those tickets?
There will be different colors.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep. And it will be up to the student who they determine who their guest will be as part of their pot.
Because if they're all white or all green or all blue,
No, we've been down this road before for.
somebody's gonna have to really look at that ticket and see if it says indoor or outdoor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
that probably may happen.
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, goodness.
Well, thank you. This is very
Absolutely.
complete. I can't believe that someone would not be satisfied because it shows you've really gone to a lot of insight to make it work. And the governor opening it up sure made it a lot easier. So thank you, everyone, for doing what you did. I think it'll be great.
It just puts us in compliance. I mean, that's the thing. So,
When is this stuff going out to?
So we wanted you to be first. We want
Okay.
to be honest here. So we will begin to release some things.
Right.
Obviously, we've been working with the school administration, but we wanted to have this presentation before we made a public announcement. We hinted at it with the social media post the other day that, obviously we were excited with the governor's update,
Yeah.
but we didn't want to say too much.
Right, because even the media's reached out to us and we told them no comment until we had presented to our board.
Okay, very good.
any other questions on graduation comments?
Now, what if there's a parent or a student that's really concerned about COVID that can't attend?
I guess it would be I'm talking off the cuff as well.
Live stream.
What now?
Watch the live stream.
Yeah, watch the live stream. And also, it's just like we do each year have a few students who decide not to walk.
Right.
And we still present them with their, we get them their diploma. It's just whatever they choose. Do they want to walk or not walk?
Mr. Painter, we talked about that today, and we feel like if you were sitting at home watching the recording of the video that had been taped, that would be the same as if you were watching the live stream. So we don't feel like you're putting that family or that whoever it may be, that individual at any sort of disadvantage.
Good, very good. Thank you.
Only the student who chooses not to walk across the stage.
Exactly.
That's the only difference.
Right.
Okay.
And you do have some each year, so.
Okay, moving on to the next informational item, the 21-22 calendar update. Mr. Benson?
Good evening, board members. Tonight I've presented to you 2 different one-pagers, we call them, okay? And you'll notice at the top, there's a couple of differences that you should probably make note of. When we presented the calendar initially in the draft, there was some confusion as to what were things on the calendar for staff purposes and what were things that would be for student purposes. So you see right at the top, there's an academic version. That's what we would say would go out to students and families. And then there's a version that just says staff, okay? And so we tried to put things on each calendar that would pertain to the group that was looking at the calendar. The second thing that we've done here that we discussed at the last board meeting is we've begun to add the grading periods. So you see that information at the bottom, in addition to when report cards and progress reports would be distributed and how that would work out. I think this is a calendar that we still feel pretty good about. And I would just remind everybody that this calendar has 180 days. We are planning on students going to school in person for 5 days a week next year.
And would you explain the remote learning days, what those really are?
Oh, yeah, so we've included the remote learning days, and really the word for remote should be review. That's the word that our citizens and our school members should consider with that. So anytime they see remote, that there's not going to be new information presented. Those are days that students will be working on review materials.
Okay, so instead of remote, you should really look at it as a review time. Review period, not a remote, do stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Just review.
One other slight change on the one pager here that we purposely left off on the one calendar that Mr. Benson had presented, the longer format, the multi-page one. We had proposed Juneteenth, as that was a state holiday now. We did not, if you look on the staff calendar, and you can tell by the stars, those are the days off. We did not indicate Juneteenth to be off, just in anticipation of what the board wanted to do. That is on the other calendar as we were presenting it as a possibility, because the state has made it a state holiday, and we just wanted to draw your attention to that it's not indicated on these little short pagers until we get further direction from the board.
in hopes for clarification, when the board does take action, these are the calendars that we would like to put to our
Yeah.
committee.
Format of it.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments from the calendar? Thank you, Mr. Benson.
You're welcome.
Next informational item is policy GCBD. Mr. Moran.
Yes, sir. Policy GCBD, that outlines what holidays are in policy. And one of the things that is not a policy, I will point out, is Juneteenth is not a policy. Recent VSBA updates do not indicate that it's going to be a policy for divisions. And so if there is additional days that you would like to add to that policy, or there's something else you would like to do, we would have to take action and modify that.
Any questions, concerns from the board on that? Thank you, Mr. Moran. Next up is informational item policy updates. We have Mr. Harlow. I'd like to welcome you tonight, and then Mr. Moran.
Yeah, Mr. Harlow is here this evening, ladies and gentlemen, to give the policy updates. He needs some experience to be in front of school boards, and so we have invited him. He and I both sat through the policy, the Virginia School Board Association policy updates. And we'll turn it over to him, and he'll review the policies we have that will need to be updated on board.
All right, thank you, guys. Good evening. So there is a lot of documents attached here, but I will say that there was not actually a lot of substantive changes to these policies. So we're going to really just focus on the major changes tonight with everybody. So there's 3 documents on board docs. The first one is what we call the red line document, which just shows the specific changes within each of the policies so that you guys can see specifically what changed. The second one, I compiled all of the new policies that we have revised just to add essentially page county into it because there's a lot of blanks that we have to add in. And then the third document is also a collection of policies that were reviewed by the state, but they were not revised. Okay, so you're going to see 3 different documents attached there. So like I said, the meeting, there was not a lot of substantive changes. The majority of the policies did nothing more than update the legal references and then also change the language to be gender neutral now. Okay, so that's what the majority of them are. The VSBA does have to review and update their policies every 5 years. So this was just a major round in terms of a lot of them were up for being updated. The biggest change that you guys will see that is consistent throughout most of them is in Virginia, federal law has changed how we classify sex offenders. So it used to be violent sex offenders, regular sex offenders, and there's now a 3-tiered classification system. So all of the policies also had to be updated in regards to that to reflect that change. So the first one we'll start with, there's only 7 that I'm going to point out, just the small changes. First one's DJF on purchasing procedures. And that was in reference to the tier structure classification system that I was telling you about. And that policy did nothing more than make the Virginia law consistent with the federal regulations and criminal law.
You know what page that is? It's 71 pages.
I don't know what page it is. They're not, it's the red line document's not numbered either.
I'm just going by the PDF pages and
Yeah,
I think when I reviewed it, it went in order of the nomenclature. So
it does, yeah.
So, Dr. Payne, if you're looking at the.
which one are you on then?
I'm on DJF is the first one.
Yeah.
Yes,
Keep scrolling.
sorry. And those documents come from the VSBA, so they're not editable, if that makes sense, and they don't have page numbers included on them.
Just page 7 of the PDF.
on the red line.
Yes.
Down there.
So that was that one. Like I said, the DJF, there was nothing more than just making sure that the Virginia law was consistent with the federal regulations. The second one, I can give you guys a minute to scroll, is GCBA. and that one's in reference to staff salary schedules. And all this policy update did was it removed the reference to an annual review of salary scales. And the reason that it did that is they noted that that is a best practice by local school boards, but it is not technically a legal requirement. So that's why they removed that from the language in that policy. The next one then will be GBL on personnel records. Again, a very minor change on this one. The only thing they did was there was 2 sentences that said the exact same thing about employee files being maintained, but not available for employee inspection. So they removed one of the sentences so that it wasn't duplicated. The next one, IGAH on family life education. I know that skips ahead a little bit. So this is an optional policy, but we do offer family life education here in Page County. And so the change is it made it more specific in terms of what parents and guardians had access to review prior to family life education. So this policy now states that any printed material or audio-visual material that instructors are using for family life education has to be available for review by being kept in a parent portal and either a school library or the main office during normal school hours.
So I have a question for the administration. In the parent portal, does Power School have such a way for that to be there for the parents to access? I guess.
I don't think Power School does, but Schoology could. Schoology could have it.
Okay.
So like those were the 2, again, parent portal and then the school library or main office. So the or was the second part. JHH is the next policy. And that one is on suicide prevention. And all that policy did is it updated and reviewed, based upon the last 5 years, the most recent versions of suicide prevention duties, made a clear definition of abuse and neglect and reporting procedures, and then the parental review of materials for suicide prevention. The next policy is KNA, violent sex offenders on school property. And this policy is just getting deleted completely. And the reason being, it goes back to that first point that I was telling you, that violent sex offenders is no longer even a classification in terms of federal law, and our state is aligning with that. So any of the information that's still pertinent in this policy, according to the new classification system, has been moved to policy KN on sex offender and crimes against minors registry information. So the parts that are still pertinent to the new classification system were just moved, and the whole violent sex offender classification was deleted. And then the last one, policy LEA, was on student teachers. This policy also is being deleted. And the reason for that is similar to one of the previous policies. Student teacher policies are not required by law. They are based upon the superintendent's recommendation. So again, that's just another change so that it is not necessarily a legal requirement to have student teacher policies. And so those were the major changes that came from the phone conference, but there are, like I said, about 50-ish that were reviewed, and then about another 10 or 12 that were reviewed but had absolutely no revisions at all. And they're all attached to board docs. So if you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer them, or Mr. Moran will help me answer some of them.
I will say this is one of the fastest VSBA updates I've ever sat through. It took about an hour. And typically we'll sit in those things for about 3 hours. But again, most of these updates are changes in language or reference changes and that sort of thing. There's no real big change. We've seen some updates where laws have been significantly changed, and these updates don't have that. Being that there are so many updates, I think it will update our policy all board docs substantially so that we are in compliance. Any other questions from the board?
No, but I would just like to say hello to Corey. He was a ninth or 10th grader when I retired from Stonewall, and I had his mom and all his uncles and whatever, so it's just wonderful to see him in his counseling position, and thank you for all that you do at Stanley Elementary. It's great to see you
So,
again.
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And please, the board will bring this back to you next time, an action item.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is that going to be the first meeting in April? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to the next informational item. Board of Supervisors Resolution Update. Dr. Gonzalez and Ms. Sechrist.
Yes. Last Tuesday, the four of us had the pleasure to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting. It was a little disheartening, to be totally honest, because our resolution was listed as an action item and it was not treated as an action item. It turned into an informational item with me giving a report on our return to learn plan. There were some misunderstandings by some of the Board of Supervisor members who were rather accusatory of the fact that we were not open and that we weren't schooling and we weren't doing things. So, kind of insinuating, why give us anything if we're not doing our job? And then we were invited, well, perhaps they can come back and give us an update, to which I popped up and said, I'm ready now. And just went ahead and updated. And I did say to them, I said, I'm sorry that you're not aware of what all we're doing, because we update our school board regularly at our meetings. And then I proceeded to outline, as you all know, kind of the process of how we've been open in the days of the week and what it's looked like, and try to attend to all the comments that were given prior to my standing up. And we were prepared to ask for the textbook monies. Eric was prepared with his information, the buses, Lance was prepared. We had rehearsed, we were ready for all the questions, and then it never even got to it. Some of the things that we were a little bothered by that evening was then they were saying that perhaps the resolution would need to go out to the public as a notice. I reminded them that the reason that we had the money that we had was because at the end of last year we ran out of time, and that unlike other entities in the county, I did not name any, I said we can't be out of our budget, so we cannot order things like a bus or textbooks if we don't get it invoiced and have it on the premise and paid for it. So we have to incur all that, or it gets accrued into the other year. So we made that, and then one of the board members was asking to see a list of all our savings, and I proceeded to inform that board member that there it is on the screen, 1.5 million, that's our savings, and yes, it does come from fuel, and yes, it does come from this, that, and the other. And I was explaining it, I said, but I kept reiterating, we've been good stewards of our money. We sat on it because we did not know our revenue. We did not know the sales tax information. We did not know if we would be held harmless and have the funding at the end. We were being conservative so as to not go over our budget. Therefore, we were asking for the money to come back now because we were not able to do the textbooks and the buses again because that whole timetable. So when, they just wanted all this accounting, and, I gave them to answer their questions enough, but again, realizing that we answer to you all and not to them, but I was trying to be polite and give them the information they were looking for. And then she mentioned, Ms. Mueller mentioned that she would have to announce it to the public, and I reiterated again, we're going to be in the same situation this year with the time frame. It was supposed to be an action item tonight so that we could purchase these items and get them in time. We were led to believe through a conversation that was held before we go to anything. I will have to say our team is trying to be really prepared for everything. So we knew we had our ducks in a row. We were told that if we asked for the money to be back, the rollover money, that if we asked for it in two parts, which we did, textbook and buses, one part, with the other portion of the 1.5 being rolled over into CIP, which is what we all agreed to with our gentleman's agreement with this board of supervisors in our work session, that would go to fiscal year 22. So therefore, it would not going to be the whole lump sum, and we were assured that it would not have to go out to public notice at that point. That night, something else was said differently. The other issue that we have is that we just feel like that perhaps we have a lack of understanding between the two boards as to what we thought was going to happen and what's actually happening. And their budget manager, as well he should, advised them of other projects they could use the money for that they needed, like radios and jails and things. And so again, when I stood up, I tried to remind them that that was our money that we needed. And so I was a little bit frustrated with the way all of that went down, and just the lack of understanding of what we've been doing. When someone says that we haven't been in school, I'm just like, what, have you not seen the buses on the road? I guess I was so floored by some of that. And so, I was just talking really fast to get it all out there, so I didn't get cut off. But and then we saw, I'm just going to be totally honest about what we saw there, and I'll have Ms. Seacrest add to it. Well, the four of us, we were having a hard time that night, because when she presented her budget, before here in our budget, we had provided her with the superintendent's proposed budget. She did not use those numbers in her proposal. She used level funding, which to me is never a good sign, especially when we had already given her the figures, something to work from, even though we're tweaking ours. And then they were touting that they had a 14 million basically slush fund that they were so proud that they now have accumulated. And so we're sitting there thinking, wow, we haven't gotten any money in the last 2 years. I'd had a conversation with Ms. Mueller when that other situation was occurring in the county that I won't mention publicly now, that we were concerned as a school division that somehow we ended up with no money, that absolutely never happens, and somehow it's happened 2 years in a row. So we made them very aware that we were concerned about how somehow we always end up with no monies and then we end up even, because again, that never happens. And with the understanding of the CIP was going to roll over and fund that balance, and we all agreed we were making a separate fund balance, and now we have a separate fund balance for it, and that's how we were going to do that. So it just seems like a little, it's not quite what everything we had kind of agreed to is not coming to pass. I will let them speak to it in just a minute, and then I would like to propose what I think the next step should be, if you don't mind. But team, would any of you like to go ahead and add commentary to our experience on Tuesday night and our takeaways?
I don't think these are, it's a weird situation, because it was planned purchases. These were purchases that we planned on making last spring, and then COVID happened. So we have taken the necessary steps we are ready to make a recommendation for textbooks. And then, well, guess what? We delayed it a year, and I just say from the textbook side, education looks a lot different a year from it right now it did from last year. So we made some accommodations to get through this year, but that's not to say we do not need those elementary literacy materials in place. We typically here in Page County adopt every 5 or 6 years. We usually go with the 5-year just because we try to keep that purchase as small as possible, that amount that's as small as possible. Obviously, this year's purchase in the textbooks, we didn't have devices in all of our elementary students' hands. So when we were looking at textbooks last year, we weren't thinking about having an online textbook component, but we are now. But we would still like to move forward. That's part of the education here in Page County, to be able to provide the necessary materials for our students. So I hope that's okay. I think
Yes,
we're still pushing for. We would still like to be able to make that purchase.
These were planned purchases.
Yeah,
Yes,
similarly, the buses are,
Dedicated funds.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
So that should
yes.
be repeated.
Yes.
Which we were told, we don't know what your revenue is, so hold any of these big purchases.
So we did.
We were unsure of state revenue at that point. Sales tax numbers were unknown. We didn't know what the ADM, what that was going to look like. We didn't know if there was going to be any hold harmless money. We were told to put those. We also have to, and I think Dr. Gonzalez did a good job alluding to this, to say, when you order textbooks, you have to make sure everything is here and accounted for by June 30th. Okay? And I'm just going to tell you, things don't just come. It's not Amazon Prime. Okay? Things don't just come overnight. Okay? When you're talking about textbook purchasing that number of materials, if we make the purchase tomorrow, we're not sure we're going to get it here and have it inventoried and ready for June 30th. And Dr. Gonzalez did a nice job that evening saying, every time you guys kind of put us off, it puts us in a difficult spot because we don't know that we're going to be able to get those materials here in time. And I think the same is true for the buses.
yeah, if we don't have the buses on lot at the same time, then we don't have buses. They have to appear in this fiscal year. We're looking to order 3 buses with those funds for rollover. And we haven't purchased a bus in it's 5 years now, okay? And our bus fleet is 70 buses. And if we don't start purchasing some buses, when they break down, kids are gonna have to start walking to school. We need to have school buses.
Maybe we need the parents to get on more supervised for money instead of getting on the school system.
Yeah.
So did the school finance or the BOS finance person encourage you guys to hold off on those expenditures? Did I hear that right? What was the reasoning? Was that your own reasoning, saying we better hold off on these purchases last year because we don't know what it's going to be like?
That's what we were told from the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
Yes.
By the state, yes,
Okay.
not from the
Not from
county, no,
so
sir.
you're doing your due diligence
Right.
based on the advice from the state,
Yes.
you know, and
Yes.
then you got dedicated funds for things that are necessary for the schools.
At one point, he's still doing it. Dr. Lane has a Tuesday morning call with
Yes.
division
Still doing
superintendents. And at one point, several of us were allowed to participate in those calls.
Okay.
And for your information, Mr. Grubler, Ken Dickey, the state, I guess, finance
Yeah.
Finance guru.
right, said, school divisions should know if you're planning these big purchases, please put them on hold.
Yeah.
So we followed the state guidance.
That's great. But you're getting penalized now, is what I'm hearing.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
it feels that way, yes.
Yeah.
And we were even questioned as to how we spent our CARES money, and we have no problem providing that documentation, because, you know, it's not a secret, we present it here in school board meetings. It's just, I just feel like if they want to know so much, they ought to watch our meetings as well. But on that same token, a lot of surrounding counties gave their CARES monies to their school divisions to help them out. And I made it clear that night that we were behind the 8 ball with devices and technology and getting supplies out there, so we've had to use all ours up. And the county, you know, they kept their money to try to help get the internet going. Well, as you just heard from a citizen comment today, they're still griping about that, and that's not on us. But I just needed to be known, while other divisions are given bonuses and hazard pay, we're still trying to get the basics in line, and we didn't get anything from the county to help us.
Right.
And so with the little bit we have, we're trying to just really be good stewards. But Ms. Seacrest, your takeaway? Because
And in regards to the CARES money also, that money for Page County was not allocated in FY '20, it was FY '21 this year. We didn't get any of that money until this year.
we couldn't use it to
Right,
buy
right,
buses
so-
or textbooks.
So
or-
none of that, in my opinion, should affect the rollover money from FY '20 when we didn't receive it until FY '21.
Right.
So that's as far as the CARES go. They did ask some questions. I am preparing some documents and things to answer their questions.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, with the resolution, for them to turn it around
Not make it an action
and
item.
not make,
It was on as an action item on their agenda that they approved before they went forward with the meeting.
I was watching, and I'm sorry, but I thought some of the stuff was absurd. Like one thing being, how is providing radios for the county and fixing the plumbing at the jail any more important or less important than buying textbooks and buses for the students? To me, that was just absurd. Well, use your $14 million you got sitting there for those 2 projects. Give the school back the money that you already had them for. It's not like we were trying to go into your slush fund. So that's what I found as very comical. And
So let me ask you a question. So what I understand is we're within budget, right?
Yes.
We're following our budget. So why don't we just buy the stuff?
Well, we have rules, and those rules
Yeah.
are the timeline, and that's where we get squashed every year because and I pointed out to them, I said, your audit took longer this year because of that situation. I said, but that situation now has put us later. We should not be having the conversation of rollover money at the end of March. We usually have that a couple months earlier. So now we're under the crunch once again, and now that they put us off again. So this is almost.
I would never
almost
stop
right in-
not spending again.
Well,
I would never do that again.
well, and
I understand, I'm not getting on you, I'm just saying, from that standpoint, we're under budget, you buy the stuff.
And a large portion of textbook money comes from state revenue.
Right.
And so that's the issue that we had there, you know, when the state financial people are telling you the money might not be there, obviously we don't want to make that purchase. I can't remember a time when Page County Public Schools has rolled over 1.5 million. Okay, and that tells you, that speaks to, there were two big purchases planned that didn't occur. This isn't really an idea of going and saying, this is rollover funds. These were this is a unique situation.
Dedicated funds.
These
Yeah.
were
It's dedicated, yeah,
funds.
exactly.
The other part we wanted to roll over into CIP, but that's also based off our savings from not running fuel in the buses and so yes, did we get some savings from last year? Sure. But we all agreed to go in CIP because they don't fund us for CIP at all. And other counties do. So this was our way to make it, by making it a separate fund category and using the rollover money, that was the way that they harmlessly, it wouldn't hurt them. It was already allocated to us, just roll it over. And now we've got projects we can attend to try to be proactive instead of reactive.
And my thing that I keep looking at of them not funding anything in that CIP, which is capital improvement plan, when you keep deferring that, it's going to be like the old courthouse that they had. And when that thing falls down, and that's basically why they closed it and built a new building, is that what's going to happen to the schools? Because you keep deferring, and then that's going to put our students at risk, and then you're going to have to build $50, $60 million buildings again. If you just pay a little now to fix them, it costs a whole lot less than paying the big bill at the end. That's another thing I don't understand that they
So
keep
we really
wanting
should,
to do.
there's no gentleman agreement then.
Well, it did not appear that way.
Gentle lady,
It
whatever you
did
wanna call
not
it.
appear that way on Tuesday night, Mr. Painter, at all. So what I'm proposing is that we would like to construct like a letter, document, email with the information they're asking for, because it's all public record. We're not hiding anything. But I really want to dictate out the circumstances and just kind of the timeline of things and what was said and what's been this and what's been that. Because I feel like the body language that night didn't appear that everybody was engaged in the conversation. I'm just going to say that. And so therefore, I think if they had it written in front of them and really understood, and we point out the fact the last 2 years we were denied the money, and that is not okay. That is not how it works. Like, I just feel like we just need to spell it all out, and I can send it to Amity and copy all the board members, or it can come from you and I, and we send it to Amity and Morgan, and it gets to everybody. But I feel like when we're there in person, you're under such a clock that you can't get it all out. I feel like this is something they need to look at, study, review, and come prepared the next time we meet. We're getting in a time crunch, guys. We're not gonna be able to make these purchases in time, and here we go again.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, my other issue that I had is one member wanted basically accountability at line item. And they're not responsible for line item. And that's what one of them basically was
They
requesting.
get down the weeds.
Right, and that's
So-
not the board to do so. It's your
It's this board that does that, not the board of supervisors. So I just was appalled by that. And it's just like, if you've been doing that all along, maybe you wouldn't have had that problem in your own yard that you're not telling everybody about.
Exactly.
And now you're affecting us because you're still covering that up. I mean, let's just say it what it is. I mean, I think Dr. Gonzalez is being kind and nice about it. I don't have to be. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, to me, when you're taking from the kids, that's the most dirtiest thing that you can do. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's not like we're asking for it to, to do a grand palace somewhere. We're asking for buses and textbooks.
Well, I also had to remind them we were the largest employer, and because they were accusing us of not accused is the wrong word. They were questioning some things. And I had to remind them that we're the largest employer, and first and foremost, we have to abide by the DOLI rules, the Department of Labor and Industry, and when we were trying to get open and everything. And again, most of our employees are from Page, our students are Page, they're all citizens of Page. There's this feeling that we're just the extra stepchild that they have to take care of, and it's just disheartening sometimes when you go there.
Lance was talking about the buses. We need the buses. And if we don't get them, what's gonna happen? The state will come along and say, you're gonna buy so many buses this year. Regardless whether you got the money or not, you got to buy them.
Right.
Well, it's a safety issue.
Yeah. But it's
I mean, when they wear out.
road now, you know that.
Yeah, we have a bus right now, but 1991.
See?
Well, I would say a textbook is a pretty staple for an
Yeah.
elementary school.
Yeah, it's not a palace.
Yeah.
It's not, a textbook is pretty staple.
And it's pretty sad that if they said in the meeting, well, we heard you weren't having school, you're not doing, where have they been?
Exactly. I was so
I'm
shocked by
sorry,
that.
but they're.
You could ask that, you could ask that question on a lot of things.
And they don't know what's going on? Shame on them.
That's, yes.
One of them has kids in the school system.
Yeah.
They're worried about solar.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, and they did say that the dump is now going to be making money, so that's.
yeah, $3 million.
They said that's going to be making $3 million, and then they bragged about their slush fund, and I'm sitting here going, holy goodness, and we didn't get anything the last 2 years?
Once they start paying the debt off, then we.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too with debt service. You know, I had proposed that, I don't know, 2 years ago, where when the debt service decreases, why can't we get the difference of that? Because that's a savings. I know Ms. Mueller always says, well, we're paying for that. You're not paying for it. We're paying for it when you don't give us enough funding and we have to cut things. It's on our backs for paying for that debt service. So to me, that's a natural built in. As that debt service comes down, take that difference and let that still go to the schools. That's how you finally get ahead on financing what the schools need. Because we're still in such a reactive mode. We can't seem to get ahead of it with some of the thinking.
Yeah. The thing with the resolution, that is just totally uncalled for.
Right.
Totally uncalled for. Who, was my district,
Who's in your district? Which one?
Jeff Long?
Yeah.
It never made it to even become a motion.
It didn't even get that
literally
far.
was a return to learn
Update.
update.
I literally was telling them what we've been doing all year because they truly, Mr. Lauterbach thought we hadn't been going to
I
school.
think maybe each of us talk with your
I need you to.
supervisor in your district and just
Please.
put it out there.
I
Please.
hope the local media news folks are listening tonight.
I would hope so too, because this needs to come to light. And I just think as a Robert's Law of Order, if chairman to chairman, if it's on there for action and they approved it that way and then it didn't even get addressed, not even
Well,
addressed.
it's even sad that you have two former people on there that were on the school board and certainly have an understanding of. And this is what you get?
Because
That to me was the most appalling thing. Knowing that two used to serve here, and now that they have forgotten everything about here.
I will say, board members, that we were ready. We were ready for the resolution. We had our facts. He had the mileage. He had the inventory of the trucks. He had everything with textbook. We had our POs ready. We were ready to order the very next day. We just needed to know that we had the money being allocated and we were ready to pull the trigger. We'd already reached out to the tech. So here we go again. Now we're delayed again, guys. And this is sad. It's sad for Page County and it's sad for the school system. Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question because it pertains to the approval of a purchase order over 10,000, and I know the buses are on that one. So how are we able to approve the PO? Is that being held until?
Yes, sir, that will be held until we get hear something from them.
Yeah, we'll just
Unless,
sit on it.
yes.
And where about the textbooks? Because that's not on there.
We didn't bring that one this evening, so.
Okay.
We're just.
Because you're not underneath such a timeline with them.
No, we are.
We are.
Okay.
It is a much larger purchase.
But I know the buses is already past their due date.
Yes,
Right.
from what we had spoke with the company about needing to have
Yeah.
the.
Okay.
order
So
in.
what we've done with that is I've offered the bus company a letter of intent that if the fundage is there, then we will purchase those.
And that's why they're holding it for
That's
us.
why they're holding it, right.
Okay.
But again, it just seems like we've been good stewards and responsible of always being in budget, doing what we need to do, and then this is the thanks we get for doing it. Well, thank you for letting us share out.
Any other questions about the resolution update?
Do what?
Any other questions about the resolution update? Okay. Next item is Board of Supervisors School Facility Use. Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, while we were there for the resolution, they were talking about using the schools. They were debating about how to get, their biggest complaint from their constituents is not enough people able to attend. And so they were saying, Mr. Lauterbach was like, why can't we use the schools? The taxpayers pay for it, you know, like that whole attitude. And at least Dr. Phoenix did say, well, you just have to reach out to the schools and request it. And so when we returned back from that, Lance went ahead and sent the facilities use request form to Amity just to help them to say, it's not that we're not sharing, nobody's ever asked. So we have it, but they do have technology needs that need to be done. And so we're like, why can't we be partners? Put in your cameras and stuff. We'd be happy to be able to use those after you've done your meetings. And, but we've extended our olive branch. And so that, I just wanted to make that update that we have done that.
Any questions about that? Next informational item, pay scales. Dr. Gonzalez, Ms. Sechrist, and Mr. Moran.
All right, to kick us off here, I just want to kind of keep us focused because in a little bit we're gonna be talking about the budget to approve. So we're giving you the information you're asking about to start digging into pay scales. We're hearing the commentaries from citizen comments. We've heard the comments from a couple of our board members here. So this is just the part of the groundwork. So we don't want to get so hung up in these weeds that don't confuse this with the budget that you're approving tonight. You know what I'm saying?
What paper are you?
It'll be this one in just a minute. It'll be this one in just a minute. But I just wanted to keep the focus that this is not something that's fixed quickly. There is a cost attached to it. It should be done for the long haul with the involvement of teachers and the Education Association and more stakeholders. But this is just giving you some information now, knowing that when we approve the budget later tonight, that this is still a project for next year, but we wanted to start, and we wanted to show our constituents that we're hearing them, we are addressing it, it just is gonna take a while to be taken care of. So, Ms. Sechrist and Mr. Moran?
Yeah, the pay scales you have in front of you, those are our current teacher pay scales. And what you'll see on those is, of course, a step, the pay grade, and the difference in amount or how much you move up per scale. Okay, these scales are, they reflect an average of about 1% increase. You'll see some steps are more of an increase, some are less of an increase, and right around 1% is what you're looking at overall. What we want to do with the pay scales is we want to adjust the scale so people can more easily increase their salary with regular step increases. And that's something we've been lacking here. We also need to identify current staff who experience a step freeze. At some point in the past, there was a step freeze in Page County, okay, and put them on a more appropriate step. Also, we want to adjust steps 0 through 4. If you look at 0 through 4, you'll notice they're exactly the same. Okay, and what that means is no one is enjoying a pay increase for those first 4 steps, or first 5 steps. We would like to work with our stakeholders like teachers, maintenance workers, aides, administrators, and the Page County Education Association to identify and incentivize the step scale in such a way that we attract new employees and retain our veteran staff in a sustainable way. Okay, so we're going to be looking at these pay scales. We're looking at the cost of adjusting them and doing what's necessary for staff.
So, Ms. Sechrist, would you explain what each of the columns are?
So this document that you all have was created somewhat in regards, Mr. Breeden, to some of your questions that you had at the last meeting. So you, as Mr. Ryan said, you have, this is just the teachers. This is the 10-month, and then that lighter bluish green color is the 10-month are both of them. Blue is bachelor's, the lighter blue is master's. They have the step, the grade of pay, the increment amount that happens, the percentage, and then the FTE. That is our full-time employees. That is the number of people we currently have on each one of those steps. Okay. And so then you can see there in the total column for each of those, that is how much we are currently paying in salaries on that particular step. So like they have both said, we're just getting started with this. This was basically created to answer some of those questions, Mr. Breeden, that you had about percentages and that sort of thing. But that is what those columns are there. They just provide.
This is just sad. I mean,
it's about 1%, yeah.
Truly sad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and I will say to the teachers who have been here and had to endure this pay, with one not getting it, but to endure even if you were on it, to only go up in some cases 0%, and in others basically a 1%. I mean, no wonder they're fleeing to other school divisions when they jump 4 and 5% in between each step. I mean, it's just
right. So our goal, as Mr. Ryan said, we want to be able to fix this so that there's a solid percentage change between each step, and then that way, if you not next year obviously, but maybe the year after, you would get your step plus whatever percent raise, if any, was given, so that you would always have that little bit in your step. But then if the board was able to give an additional raise, it would be step
plus whatever the raise was for that particular year.
That's a vernacular we want to start using, that we talk in terms of moving a step and perhaps a cost of living raise if it's affordable that year. In working with other divisions, we report out to each other, hey, what are you giving, what are you giving? And everyone's talking in terms of steps. There's a couple of us who aren't because our steps are so jacked up. So we need to fix this so that everyone can at least be guaranteed that they'll get a step increase. And we can start talking in terms of that. Yes, we're going to get a step increase and, or not, a percentage.
And when you do that, in my mind, and Ms. Seacrest, I'm sorry, but this puts a lot on your staff. But when you do this in each year, so you know for the superintendent's budget, well, if we go up a step, it's going to cost us this amount.
Right.
If you maintain the staff that you have.
Right. And
Now,
if it's
some
correct.
you'll get retirement. Yeah, some you'll get retirement, so those will drop
Right,
off and you'll pick
right.
up on the lower end. But
Yeah.
for the most part, if you always scheduled for this, because it can't get any worse than this,
Right.
you know, that you're going to be paying out,
Absolutely.
then you always knowing this is the number each year that it's going up. If it goes up $200,000,
Right.
then you always know that that has to be there because you have that forecasted out.
Right.
Right.
Right, absolutely.
That's where we're trying to get to fix the scales. And this is what we want to do for all of them, but we just started with the two biggest categories that we have, so you guys could get an idea of what that costs.
And you're working on the cost of what it would take to fix the scale?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's going to be.
All the budget stuff though, we gotta finish this
Yeah.
budget this year.
That-
We are looking
oh, no,
at it. No,
I totally
we are
understand that.
looking at it, and
But
again, we've looked at the
that-
teachers, and then we would still have to look at everyone else, and just looking at the teachers is going to be a large amount of money to fix the scale.
Right.
And then you have to
Oh, yes.
include everyone else.
Yeah, you have to put
To do that
fix
too,
everyone.
so-
If they think they have a hard time swallowing for the buses and the textbook,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's an effort. I mean, we have to go into personnel files, that sort of thing, find out where people are, where they ought to be, that sort of thing. And
yeah, it's a large endeavor.
yeah, it's huge. And then we also make a comparison between our neighboring counties to make sure that we're competitive. And then we need to make a determination of what part of the scale do we need to be the most competitive? Are we losing veteran teachers? Or do we need to attract new teachers? Where do we need to be?
And that exit survey that you'll do, that will give you the hint that, okay, we having 42 teachers leave us, and 38 of them are leaving because they can get more money in Shenandoah County
Sure.
or Warren County. So that's going to be a big help of knowing, well, that's why they left. Okay. Any questions, concerns on that? Okay. Moving to the next one, and that is superintendent search update. That one's on our questions that were submitted in by division staff. We each have looked at those. We have compiled ones that we believe are imperative to put out for the staff to answer. We'll have Dr. Painter was so gracious to compile them in one big list. We have those now, and the board will have some homework to look at these, remove any duplicates, come up with a list that we do want to get. And since it's being done in Google Forms, we're not limited to how many questions or anything like that, where you are with SurveyMonkey unless you pay for it. So if you feel that all 29 of them is sufficient, then there you go. If you feel that, 10 or 15, it's whatever the pleasure of the board is. So take a look at them and know which ones that are important to you as a board member, to your constituents, and definitely to the staff that they would want to answer. And remember, reviewing these, it's about what they believe about the superintendent, not about interviews of the superintendent. Because I know we got some of those questions, and a lot of them were good to pose questions to the new superintendent coming in. But this is really asking our staff, what is their view on the new superintendent that we would consider to hire? So also looking at these, I haven't reviewed them all, but if they were taken from a majority of them, I think it's going to speak to that what the staff can ask and answer according to what they were looking for in a superintendent.
Can we set a deadline as to when we get back to Amy?
And I
And,
could do a draft and have it back to you all.
yeah, and then we look at it, and if we're in agreement, let's go with it and get it out.
Yeah, we have to do that first before we write the description of the new superintendent qualifications
Sure.
and expectations, and then we can get the application posted. So,
Can we all have this ready by Wednesday of this week? That's tomorrow, and then get them to Amy on Wednesday?
And then I can make you a draft and everybody could look at it.
Wednesday by what time?
5:00.
Amy, what works
You
best for
want it
you?
earlier, you're gonna be looking at them, you say.
I don't care. I can get anything done. Just tell me. I'll get it done.
Okay, we'll say Wednesday by 5,
Yep, that's fine.
so that way you're not up all night working on it.
Oh, I won't be.
All right, so do we have the date for Wednesday, March?
24th.
All right, thank you. March 24th by 5. And then Dr.
I'll
Pena.
have them back to you by Thursday at 5 if you would like to. That way I can work on it Wednesday evening. That way you can give feedback on the rating scale or if it's a multiple choice or whatnot. And then
Short
when
answer.
we're satisfied, you can send the Google form to whoever to send out.
Okay. Okay.
Because
And
they have spring break next week, so I don't know how long you want to give staff to do it. I mean, the hope is when it's a survey, you don't make it too long or they're going to,
Right.
it doesn't matter anyway
Right.
what I put.
you want them.
And I don't want that mentality. I want it to be, if I give it 5 minutes,
Right.
they're going to value what I.
Well, and I think if we give one of the questions, if we didn't ask one, if we just leave one open-ended and say, what is something that is important to you? They can put that one down. If it's not already on the list, it's an open end. And then they can say, well, this is what's most concerning to me if it's not already asked. But Mr. Staples, we had spoken about doing the email for the samples. I keep doing that.
He's a former superintendent over there, right? Of the state, Staples?
So, yeah. So you had said there's an email that can be set up that would then shoot to each one of us the results.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I've actually already got that group set up.
Okay.
And it's tied in all of your accounts.
Okay. And I'll let you know who to send that to, so the results can then be shot to each one of us, so we can look at the results as they come in. Okay. All right. Any other questions, concerns
So
about
she gets our feedback by
Wednesday at
Wednesday
5.
at 5?
Wednesday at 5. and then
I'll get
we-
it back to you with a draft by Thursday at
Thursday.
5.
And when do we wanna, how do we wanna go from there? Do we wanna wait till the following Monday or go ahead and put it out there to see if everybody likes it? And if it's like it, work it out the following week to send out? Or do you
Well-
wanna wait till the next meeting?
If everybody looks at it on Thursday night, Friday, and you say it's okay, and we've worked out all the logistics, and Monday, we can send it to Mr. Bell to create the
Okay.
form. He can set it all up, and he'll.
Well, I was going to make your draft form for you.
Oh, well, then there you go.
Because, I mean, I can edit off of your feedback on that.
I would like to go ahead and, get it out as soon as we can.
Because maybe if,
providing we're all in
we
agreement.
take responses up until, I mean, hopefully it's only going to take somebody 5 minutes. So if we had our responses for our next board closed session, maybe we could work on our,
Community.
Yeah, so if, given that, if we get everything to you and get it all done on Friday, it can go live, and then when do we want the staff to have it completed by?
They're on spring break that following week though, guys.
Well, we got to do it. They can-
Yeah, but they're on spring break, they're not gonna,
They're not gonna check an
I
email.
forgot about that.
oh, I bet they check their email.
Well, a certain percentage would, but there's percentages that won't.
well, even if you open it on Monday, you give
Yeah.
them that Monday and through next Wednesday. So you give them time.
You could look at it too, because most of those questions, the way I read them, it's the same feedback we'd want from the community. So we might be able to reuse some of the questions.
Right, it'd be a duality. And, well, my thinking was if you use the same questions, other than if it dealt with just staff issues, if you use those same questions, then you get the metric for the staff and you get it for the community. And then
Gotcha.
you can
Yeah.
compile that and say, well, 94% of community and staff want this. So if we do that and then give the staff to that Wednesday and,
The Wednesday after break.
That'd be April 7th, and then the next board meeting is April 12th.
okay. All right.
Then, now, will you send out an email to all the principals saying,
No, he's
you'll
gonna
go
send
to
it out,
each, oh, okay.
Who's-
right? Isn't Blake gonna shoot it out? or
No,
something?
he's gonna just provide
Oh.
the email for the
But can't
response.
y'all do that all PCPS thing?
Yeah, we can, whatever you all want to push out, we can have Trisha push out to whoever your audience is, community or, because all it is just announcing to go look at the survey.
Yeah, well, it'd be the staff first,
Well,
so,
we can do it by staff as well. You just tell us who your audience is and we can push it out.
okay.
Because we don't have any access to it, we're just the announcers.
Mhm.
Will you write up the direction, whatever, to be, to whoever? Here
To
it
hook
is,
to the
make sure
survey
you're-
or whatever,
Yeah.
Okay,
and then the little link will just go.
Yeah,
on
we'll
there.
just need a link, Trisha will need the link to put it in.
so I'm creating an email, just say what it is.
Or an
Yeah.
announcement, because
Just
it
announcement,
comes
here
out.
it is,
Yeah,
make
it
sure your
comes out on the
staff.
app.
Oh, okay,
Gets
Something
pushed to
brief.
Trisha.
yeah, so they'll read it. So I work with Trisha
Yeah.
on that, since she's our communication specialist.
That's right.
There you
Um,
go.
so if you let her know tomorrow that I'll be reaching out,
Mhm.
I don't want her to be shocked by me reaching
No, I'll
out
give her the heads up.
without not knowing.
I'll tell her to answer your call.
On staff survey. Okay, I'll be working on that as Amy's working on her compiling of these. So what date did we say for the staff? It's April.
7.
Okay.
That's my spring break, but I'll still work.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. Okay. All right, any other questions about the superintendent search update? And when we finish this and we move into the application, when we talk about that on our, in another open meeting, we'll set the timelines and the dates for all of that to happen as well. So, okay. All right, moving on to action items. Claim for payment, Ms. Sechrist.
Good evening, board. You all have been provided with a claim certification, where total operating fund was $420,221.11. Food service expenditures, $42,947.16, for a total of $463,168.27. Along with that, you have been provided the list of claims as well as the check register. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
I do have a question on the check register.
Yes, sir.
Hard to read on the thing. Okay, what's the difference between Emmett oil and corals?
Corals is program.
Propane? Okay, because they sell gas too, so that's why.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is. I have another one, but I can't find it right now. The Emmett oil, that was another question. That's the oil to heat the buildings, correct? It's something about the nerve. pocket nurses or something. Yeah, pocket nurse.
It's a nurse you fit in your
Oh,
pocket.
That's the supplies for the tech center.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, what is a pocket nurse? Okay,
That's the vendor name.
okay, that's all. Board have any other questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the claims for payment as presented this evening.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Hubler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Street.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. Okay, for the purchase order over 10,000.
Board members, we do have 2 purchase orders over 10,000 this evening for your approval. As Mr. Green said earlier, one is for the 3 buses. We want to have that ready to go upon, if the Board of Supervisors gives us approval for that money, that we can go ahead and put this through and be ready. The other one is to Dell for 8 laptops and power supplies for those.
Okay, where are those 8 laptops?
Central office, people who have to, their employers.
Okay, got it.
Chairman, I make a motion that we pay purchase orders over $10,000 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Hubler.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Street.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. Next item for approval is out-of-state field trips. Mr. Benson?
Good evening, board members. Once again, we have received an out-of-state field trip request for from Page County High School, FCCLA. This request is to attend the National Leadership Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. They are asking for 8 students to attend. All of these students have participated in the different competitions and things that would allow them to partake in this. They were somewhat vague, just be honest, on the request because they didn't know if the request would be approved. So they haven't said necessarily how they are planning to travel. They've listed a couple of different options, air being one of those. They did look at some flights that leave a direct flight out of Weir's Cave and goes right to Nashville. Once they get there, everything seems to be pretty much in walking distance. And so we have looked at the COVID procedures for the national conference, and it looks like everything is in line with what we do here in our division, meaning the social distancing, the required masks and different things. We did reach out to 3 other schools. Generally, when it's a national FCCLA conference, we wanted to check with the other 2 middle schools and the other high school, and there has not been this level of interest. Page County Middle School is going to participate virtually. Luray High School is not planning to attend this conference, and the same is true for Luray Middle School. So this is the only request that we expect for the FCCLA National Conference.
How many is going?
8 students. They do have the correct number of chaperones and things. We did look at that. June 25th through July 2nd.
I'll add that Tennessee is relaxing some of their mitigation strategies, but the conference is not.
The what now?
Tennessee is relaxing their mitigation strategies, but the conference is not relaxing theirs.
Right, they're being very strict. And I might say that one of the students is a state officer.
Right.
So we would definitely, if you don't approve all 8, we definitely need her to attend as a state officer.
We have a state president in this group. So
Yes.
it's a big honor for them.
Well,
to be
the
here.
other thing is the parents have the final say.
Right.
So we approve it. If the parents choose not for them to go, then
Then,
they don't
Because
go.
they know what's best for their own child.
Exactly.
It would be our recommendation that we approve. I think we should go on
Yes.
the record to say that.
Yes, that is our recommendation.
And if we do that, I would like to know, a few more details as you get to like costs and how
So
are
we-
they getting to the airport?
Right, so we have some of that we can
Okay.
provide you tonight. $300 is expected for food costs. Registration is $150. The hotel is approximately $400 per student. So that's, staying with several students in a room, obviously, and different things. And then there are some entry fees for some of the different competitions that are $45. The big unknown is just transportation. So how they're
I was
going
going
to
to say that the local chapter is paying for a lot of this, is that correct?
students are,
Students are
yeah,
paying.
Ms. Comer
Okay.
has surveyed the students, and the cost is not a factor in any of this, that the students feel comfortable to be able to absorb the cost that would be required by the district.
It's well worth, I mean, these programs are put together, they're phenomenal, so we can work it.
And they need the experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip request?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the out-of-state field trip to Nashville, Tennessee for the FCCLA National Conference.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Dr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yeah.
Mr. Rainfair?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Breeden?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next action item is fiscal year 22 school budget. Dr. Gonzalez and Ms. Sechrist.
Yes, Ms. Sechrist is going to do the presentation in just a moment, but I'd like to draw your attention to, you all had asked for some data about other divisions that have director of accountabilities or similar positions or whatnot. So this is just, it's not exhaustive, it's not the whole state, it's like our region, the Valley, Central Virginia, just kind of, and a couple of them have multiple positions, obviously, because the bigger the division, but just to give you a sense of the flavor of what's out there. So we just wanted to make sure you had that as you requested that information from us. A note about the budget. We do have one or two things that had to change in the budget that Ms. Sechrist is going to explain. Please realize that we do need to have an approved budget to be able to go to the work session next Tuesday night. The four of us and Mr. Breeden will be there again to present, like Dr. Painter, we're going to be working during spring break. We have to go and present at their work session. So please feel free, if you like the budget but you want to amend something, you can vote to say, I support this budget, but amended with whatever y'all want to take out or add in, if there's any changes tonight. So that way we're not delayed in taking it forward to the Board of Supervisors next Tuesday, knowing that once we know what monies we're getting, we'll be back at this again to reapprove another budget once we know what we have to cut out and everything. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Ms. Sechrist.
Good evening again, board. You all have been provided with the PowerPoint slides along with an updated budget book document. These slides you're going to see, a lot of them are similar slides that we've seen throughout this whole process that have just been updated to reflect what we have discussed and what you guys have agreed on prior to tonight's meeting. So just a quick presentation overview, the division goals, the budget highlights, budget impacts, budget priorities. I am going to discuss an accounting change for the school debt service, revenue and expenditure summary, capital improvement plans, some budget influences, and then of course our next steps. This here is the slide you saw the very first time we presented a budget with just the division goals, the captions in there, nothing has changed from that. I won't reread this to you. Budget highlights. This has changed just a little bit here. You can see there where it says Fund 1, and underneath of it says removes debt service per county request. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit more about that in just a minute. I have a slide on it to explain. Still has the Fund 2, that CIP capital improvement fund that we have created. Because of that accounting change that's going to happen with the debt service, it increases Fund 1 to 3.28% over FY21. There's a 12.9% exclusive of debt service change. Still includes all of our priorities. It also does reflect an increase in workers' compensation, and that is due to the change in the debt service request from the county, and then the capital improvement plan as well that we have already discussed. Still the same impacts. The only thing that was added to this was the workers' compensation increase, and again, I'm going to get to all of that. But those are all the same impacts that we discussed the very first time. Operational budget priorities, I think you guys have seen this slide a couple times. Now reflects the 5% raise, has the director of accountability, the reading specialist, as well as the Lexia power up for both middle schools. Okay, big change for tonight. Accounting change for school debt service. So the county has communicated a recommendation from their auditors to remove the debt service from the school division's general ledger. As we know, school boards in Virginia cannot issue debt. Therefore, audit adjustments are necessary every year to transfer the school debt service to the county ledger. We end up kind of being the middleman in that when we pay the bills, basically. So this is a change in accounting only, and it has no impact funding for FY22, which means it's just going to be removed from the expenditure budget as well as the revenue budget. However, as Dr. Gonzalez spoke to earlier, sometimes there is savings with debt service. And we had acquired some savings, and we had planned to use that to pay for an additional, we had got notice that additional, workers' comp was going to go up additionally about $15,000, and we were kind of absorbing that with the debt service savings. Now, when we turn all of that over, we will not get that savings from debt service. So that is why you see on the priority list that it also says that the workers' compensation would now be an additional cost, and that is $15,000. It is in your budget book. It's been in your budget book the entire time on page 33 on that list, that object code list that we looked at. However, it's now a cost to us instead of being able to be paid for by the savings.
Okay, I have a question on this.
Sure.
Okay, is our county doing this and putting it on the auditors to us because of that extra savings? Or is it done statewide and other school divisions are also doing
A lot of other school divisions do this. They do not transfer it into the school general ledger and then the school pays it. It's usually just directly paid from their county or locality. A lot of school divisions do that. When we were comparing things, when Mr. Gubler had asked for that comparison of expenditures, it was really hard for us to compare some expenditures because some counties have debt service and some don't carry it on their general ledger. So it is done in other places. And in the long run, it will probably be best for us. It's just right now, it messes with our numbers for this budget presentation. And then of course we lose the savings from that. So that's a little bit of
I'm just checking because
Yes,
that
sir.
seems to be a little underhanded. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay. The expenditure chart is the same there, except you can see that the debt service has been removed, and then the proposed FY22 numbers have increased due to your priorities that we have updated, and they're the 5% raise in the position. The pie chart shows that we do spend about 71%, or will, depending on the funding for this budget, 71% will go to instruction, 7% to admin, attendance and health, 6% to transportation, 12% to operations and maintenance, and 4% to technology. Of course, that's based on exact approval of this particular budget and numbers. Revenue chart. There again, you can see the debt service. That's where you can really see where it impacts because it's all lumped together from the local money. It is split out when I do my reporting. But you can see there that it shows that large change due to the debt service being removed. And then again, the pie chart, you can see there, we really rely heavily on the state and our locality for our funding. I know that we're getting lots of federal grants and things because of COVID, but you can still see even with those calculated in there, that's not near the percentage of the state and the local. Next slide, this is the capital improvement plan slide. This is stayed the same. It does have a link there to our plan for anyone who wants to access this on Word docs or out on the web so that they can get to the capital improvement plan easily from that. But nothing's changed from that from the very first slide or the first presentation. The next slide is just the updated budget influences sheet. And you can see this is where we reflected the debt service there. It says at the top, the school board approved budget reflects an increase in expenditures over the current budget. But reports show an increase, and that shows your percentage change between 12.9 and the 3.28. Still shows the federal, state, and local funds, an updated number for the approved priorities. The workers' comp is still now showing. ESSER funds are still the same, and then other federal funds are also still the same. This last slide here is just the total budget. We have really focused on Fund 1 during all of our meetings and work session. However, there is still the capital improvement that we have created. The food service fund is there. And so then the total budget there is at the very bottom. And again, our main focus is the total operating there at the top. Last slide is just the next steps. We go next Tuesday to present, not this exact presentation. I am going to beef it up a little bit and give lots more explanation and that sort of thing for the Board of Supervisors on specific topics and our priorities. But you can see there, then we have several regular meetings. They are to adopt their budget on May the 4th, and then we have a work session again on May the 5th. As Dr. Gonzalez already said, we'll come back and decide based on our funding what we're going to do.
What's the seating area like?
So that was discussed heavily at the meeting that we attended, the seating at the BOS. They can have 10 in the room where we are at. They can have, I believe, 10 out in the hallway that they could then bring in if people shuffled in and out, was my understanding from their conversation, as well as I think 10 more in the other room.
Or go to the schools,
Yes, I say, or utilize the,
the auditoriums.
Right. So, but I think you were referencing for Tuesday is correct. So, I mean, if you all were to attend, I mean, I would be more than happy to step out for one of you all to be in if necessary, or however we wanted to do that.
Well, if they could get 10 in, at least 10 of us.
I don't know if it's 10 of us or 10 total, including
them
them.
there too.
I'm not sure how that works, but again,
I want to say there was 9 seats in the
Yeah.
audience that night.
I said 9
You
seats.
3 were on the front, and then me and Tyler were in the back row.
And then you had a
and then
couple
there was a
more.
row behind us.
Okay,
yes,
it's about
okay.
9.
So, and if you do feel like you'd like to come, and I can obviously relay that information if we feel like we are going to need more seats, and I'll let them know that how many we have attending.
Well, do we have agreement on what's gonna happen? Since it didn't happen.
So it's a work session.
It's just a work session, and we're just presenting. So, no, sir, but. So then they'll take our information, they'll decide, their tax rate and public hearing, that will give us, on April the 20th, that'll give us a pretty good idea of our funding possibly. And then again, it's just ours is just a presentation. Or I mean, I'm sorry, on Tuesday.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
It might be helpful just to have a very simple summary sheet that shows the timeline of when kids went back to blended learning, eventually to 4 days a week, just to say, if someone says, your kids haven't been in school all year, you can just hand them this and say, this is what's been going on with K-2, this is what's been going on with 3-2 middle school, et cetera, et cetera. And there's your chronology, and you can compare to Shenandoah County and some of these other local places, and, generally speaking, right, Mr. Benson?
Yeah.
We're
Dr.
in
Gonzalez, maybe the first page of that document,
Yeah, we could use that one.
that shows the percentages.
Yeah.
Shows where we were by quarter,
Well-
what grade levels.
Well, that's just it. People so critical sometimes to forget we've really been the leaders. We
Yeah.
were coming back to school way before Nova was.
Right.
You know?
That's part of the story, is the fact that we had to move staff around to keep
Yes.
our middle school and elementary going, and went virtual with the high schools.
That's why we had to do it. With
Because we
staff.
have led,
Yes.
and that's what I don't
That's right.
understand. People are
And I
that
will say,
oblivious.
I will say this, Dr. Gonzalez did a wonderful job stepping up there last week and really painting the whole picture of from where we were to where we are now. She did a great job. I'm hoping that that's not going to turn into what this budget presentation is going to be about. Since this is supposed to be about the budget, I hope it doesn't end up to be more return to learn. But again, we'll
It's
see.
just to have that.
Yeah, and then that would answer all the questions, wouldn't it, Mr. Gilmore? We wouldn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Persistence and preparedness. You already got preparedness now,
Right.
but persistence.
Yeah, so, yeah, I do like that, and then that, we wouldn't even have to almost discuss it anymore.
Well, I would appreciate if you guys would reach out to your counterparts. We just need some, because really percentage wise, when you look at what we're asking, in an operating budget, a 3% increase is normal. It's not astronomical, it's not a big ask.
Well, one thing to consider too, board members, talking with the county council today in Shenandoah, when anything about school, but it came up that, how are the schools doing? And I started sharing and I don't know what they don't read or hear, but I'm thinking, maybe we ought to be going to the town council meetings, maybe once a month, and just bringing them up to par as to what we are doing, because the communication is not sinking in. And, that's just a thought. But in my situation, I think there's 2 of the members that have kids in the school system. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying, that's just something, I know it's time consuming, but at least, we've reached out and given them, and not that they have, but, maybe they can talk about it, because, they benefit from stuff too, so.
And I know when I worked at Luray Elementary, when Dr. Power was here, that was one of the requirements that we had to attend the town council in case they had any questions about the schools and anything like that. Most of the time they never did, but we had to attend those meetings. So I didn't see the value in it then, but certainly in these kinds of times, there is a value.
If you can work it.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 school year budget?
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the fiscal year 22 school year budget.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lanfear,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, on to the next approval item, matters discussed in closed session. You wrote it down?
Oh, I thought I already done.
Yeah, I think we did them backwards. We should have certified earlier that it was personnel stuff and that all this stuff, this one.
Okay, so it was approved?
Yes.
But now you need to certify.
I need to certify now.
Okay, now we need to certify. Okay, we can do that.
We were practicing.
Do that.
I don't have them.
I'd like to certify personnel matters discussed in the closed meeting, section 2.2-3711A1.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I have a motion and a second that we certified matters discussed in closed session.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lanfear,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to, board discussion time. Any board member have any cares, concerns, discussion points?
I'm just tired.
I just got a couple.
Okay.
That's okay. First off, I appreciate some of the parents reaching out to me in a private message on social media. And then there's a lot of discussion that was on social media about some sexual exploitation materials that was in some of our studies. And I just want to tell parents, not everything's a conspiracy. That we're trying to corrupt children. Because people were taking that and going in the wrong direction. What it was trying to prevent sexual exploitation. And if we don't know that that's not going on in our county, you are unaware. And I'm glad the schools are doing something about it and talking about it. Secondly, physical therapy assistant program. There is one at Lord Fairfax Community College. It is through the Germanna Community College. The clinicals will be at the Page Memorial Hospital. This is information for children that might want to get into this. Registration is from April 15th to May 15th. There's 12 spots available every year. So that's right in your backyard. You can save money going to community college if you're concerned about the bills. important stuff. I also think they have some construction simulation over there as well. Great programs for parents to grab a hold of. Secondly, when we talk about messaging, I think one of the big messages that we need to start adding to the informational is the recovery that we've had. I know we get them updates, but I think it's good for the community to know where we were and where we're going and how we're going to solve some of these issues. So I'm making a request, Mr. Chairman, if that could be put on the informational moving forward, I would appreciate that
We
on the
can certainly make
agenda.
that happen.
Great idea.
Yeah, because that's where we were at. That was a huge situation. I think you guys have made some great strides on it.
Might as well highlight it.
Just got to highlight it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because evidently the communication is, Mrs. Smoot said, it's not happening. So that's my three things. Thank you.
I appreciate you joining.
Any other board member have comment? Concern? Okay,
I do.
with hearing no another, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn and second.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.